the workshop because of they're preparing for the final exam.
Right.
Yeah.
Always.
I think maybe more students will come later,
Sure.
and yeah, maybe we can start now.
Sure.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the iKeynote series co-organized by Renmin University of China and Universities Indonesia and iSchool's Asia Pacific Next Generation Committee. I'm Di Wang from the School of Information Resource Management of Renmin University, and I'm very happy to be the moderator for today's session. Today, we have proudly invited Dr. Lamy as our keynote speaker. Okay, I will first briefly introduce Lamy. Lamy is an assistant professor at the Department of Library and Information Science, Faculty of Humanities, Universities Indonesia. She earned her master's and PhD from the University of Tsukuba, Japan, and her research focuses on disaster-related human information behavior, computational social science, corporeal and embodied information, crisis informatics, documentation studies, metadata, and quantitative analysis. Dr. Lamy actively contributes to the academic community through API Next iSchool and KSKI, advancing interdisciplinary approaches to information and documentation research. And the topic of Lamy's presentation today is situated, felt, and lived, embracing the body as interface in marginalized information behavior. Okay, now time is yours, Lamy. I will stop sharing my screen.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so yeah, thank you very much. Hello, everyone, and welcome. I am very grateful to be here with all of you, and thank you for Renmin University, iSchool's Asia Pacific, and others. Today, I will be sharing a topic that might feel new, but is actually very close to our daily life, especially for people who face difficult situations or often feel left out of how systems are built. The title of my talk, like the said, is Situated, Felt, and Lived, Embracing the Body as Interface in Marginalized Information Behavior. So most of the time, we think of information as something that we find on screen in books, websites, apps, and mostly something processed in the mind. But what if information is also something we feel with our bodies, something we live through and experience in emotions? So this talk is not only speak about our minds, but also we know with our bodies, and the bodies also access and understand information, especially for people in marginalized group like people with disabilities or those in crisis. So this is me, as Dee said. Maybe a little introductions. I'm an assistant professor, and my work focuses on how people seek, use, and understand information, especially in situations where it's urgent, like when there is a disaster like an earthquake, when people are stressed, overwhelmed, or not in a safe environment. And I also use data analysis. So yes, I do a lot of work with numbers too. I've written several articles and shared my research on Google Scholar, ResearchGate, and Scopus. So I'll be sharing stories and findings from my research in Indonesia and Japan to help us rethink how we design systems and support people in real life situations. So let's talk with very simple but powerful sentences. Bodies carry knowledge and systems must be willing to listen. And what does that mean? You should think about your body tells you things all the time, like your hands feel heat, your ears can pick up warning sounds, and your feet help you find your way in the dark. So our bodies store knowledge. We move, we sense, and we remember. But most systems, like websites or even public services, don't really listen to our body. So the big problem is we don't listen to our bodies. They often exclude people who don't fit it into normal ways of accessing information. And this talk is about changing that. Sorry. Okay. So let's look at two important ideas that sound similar but different meaning. The first one is embodied information, and the second one is corporeal information. Embodied information is about how we use our bodies to get or understand information. For example, a blind person reading Braille by touch. Also, a mother senses her baby cry and knows what it means. And the body is a part of the process of finding and making sense of information. So it's about mind plus body working together. And the differences between embodied and corporeal information. For the corporeal information, it's about the body itself holding information. So, for example, you all have a scar, right? Your body scar that remind you of past event. A tattoo, for example, that tells a story, or medical record about your body. So the body is a storage of information, and it's like living archive. Both of the embodied and corporeal information, it goes beyond the brain. They remind us that information is not only something we read or type, it's something we feel, touch, carry, and live through. And in this talk, we begin with why embodied information behavior. So now let's talk about why this topic matters. Usually we think about the information, we imagine something that goes into our brain, like reading article or searching online, and that's not the whole story. Information also lives in our body. We use our eyes to watch danger, for example. So we use ears to hear warnings. We use hands to touch and navigate, and emotions and memory to make sense of what's happening. And not everyone can use information in the same way. So you should think about a person who is blind and needs to listen instead of read, or a person in a disasters running for safety while trying to hear the sirens, or even an older adult who needs to feel steady or remember familiar routes. And many systems, website, apps, even libraries are still built for one kind of user, the average user who is calm, has a good vision, can type very fast, and has no trouble scrolling or reading. And that's not fair, and that's not really a real life. So I invite you to think, how do people really search, feel, and live with information? And let's start not from the screen, but from the body. So there are three dimensions of embodied information behavior. Let's break it down into three simple parts. The first one is situated. Situated means where you are, what's going on around you, and what is happening. These all change how you use information. For example, a person in a crowded train station may need fast visual sign, but that same person at home can take time to read and think. And the second one is felt, and this means you use your senses like seeing, hearing, and touching, your feelings to understand the world. And for example, also your gut feeling tells you something wrong even before you find the actual information. And the third one is live. So live is about your daily life. So it includes your routine, how you get to work or how you get to study, your discomfort like pain or fatigue, and your caregiving, helping a child or an elderly parent. So for example, like a mother who always holds her child's hand while crossing the road, and the child may rely on touch and routine to stay safe, not just written sign. So these three dimensions, embodied information behavior, situated, felt, and lived, help us to design for real people, not just task user in perfect conditions. So I divided this talk into several papers that I've already written with my colleague. The first one, I got the idea when I'm researching disaster-related information behavior. So let's look at the real case. So you can find my paper, the use of sight, hearing, and touch on information-seeking behavior during the Great Japan earthquake. So when the disaster hits, people cannot just Google things. So they don't have time or stable internet. Instead, they use their bodies. And here's what happened. They use flashing sign, warning signs, fire and smoke using their sight. And they listen to sirens, people screaming and announcement. And they also use their touch to felt the shaking, the walls, and the surroundings. They didn't always have the same experience, but we can analyze more through age, gender, and location and other demographic characteristics to make a difference. So, for example, a child reacts differently from the senior, and a person in rural village hears different things than someone in a city apartment. So this tells us during the disaster, information is not about just apps or text. It's about feeling, sensing, and surviving, and it's very, very physical. So what can we do about it? Our policies and emergency plans must be built based on the body in mind. So there are four important things that we need. The first one, we use multi-sensory channels, not just apps. We need SMS, loudspeakers, radio, and visual signs all working together. And the second one is support community communication, face-to-face networks like neighbors, volunteers, and can help spread messages very fast. Use clear and simple language and override more than one language. People in panic don't read well, so keep it basic and accessible. And the last one, include disabled communities in training. So run drills with everyone, especially those with physical or sensory differences. And any disaster plan that forget of one of this will fail some people. So let's build with all those in mind. And the second study that I've already done in 2023 with one of my brilliant students, people who are visually impaired. So in this study, we asked librarians what they thought about services for these users, and many say we already provide access, but when we look deeper, there was a big problem, and most services were built just not to follow rules for checklists. For example, we have barely printer, or maybe we put ramps in the building, and yes, they follow the law, but did they actually help the people? The answer is not always. So because people with visual impairments don't just need tools, they rely on touch, hearing, and spatial memory. The system doesn't support this. Why? Because it's missing one key thing. It's empathy. So we need to move from compliance to co-creation. That means instead of just checking boxes, we design services together with users. And it's not about helping the blind, but it's about building better system for everyone and with them, not for them. So what we can do through the second study, there are two levels of actions. It's called design actions. The first one is small design changes, and the second one is big system changes. For the small design actions, it's really easy to start with the tactile floor guides. So we erase textures on the floor, help user feel where to walk. And the second one is braille and audio sign, not just print, also with sound and touch. The third is flexible lighting and seating. The brightness and layout affect visibility and comfort. And the last one is voice navigation and screen readers to help users who can see the screen. And system recommendations, these are for the long-term goal. It's divided into five. Yes, five. The first one is universal design. Don't design only for people with disabilities. Design for everyone and let everyone benefit. And accessibility from the beginning. Don't fix system later. Build them right from the start. And invest in sensory tools, for example, tools that use sound, gestures, and also haptic or vibration feedback. And value silent knowledge. People know a lot from their lived experience, even if they don't say it. So listen to that. Sorry, it's four. And final goal is not help the weak, but to support dignity. People feel respected and autonomy. People can act on their own. So let's build systems that empower, not ones that create dependence. And so there are two main research papers that I've already presented, another four or three that I want to deliver to you. And where is your body in information? And let me ask you three simple questions in here. Think about the moment when you urgently needed information. Where were you? Were you lost? Were you in pain? Were you worried? And the second, what did your body do? Did you move, touch, ask someone, listen carefully, or scan your surrounding? And the third, what helped you? Or what made it harder? Was there a noise, confusion, no signage, or maybe someone who guided you? Why do I ask these three questions? Because it reminds us the body is always involved in how we search, receive, and trust information, but many systems forget that. So where is the body in this experience? So another study from my supervisors, and also I helped him to do the literature review. And here is another beautiful example from our study. So we gave small GPS trackers to group of senior citizens, and they used them to record their walking routes. For example, from the park to the market, even walks in the neighborhood. And at first, this was just a tool for navigations, but over the time, something amazing happened. Like these routes become the part of their memory, and they didn't just walk, they remember stories, events, and feelings through walking, and their body become a kind of diary. And this is called life logging. Maybe you already know about the term, but not with photos or text, but with movement. And what can we learn about this paper? We argue that memory isn't just in your brain, it lives in our body, in our routines and our environment. So when we design for senior or others, we must support embodied memory, the tools that support habits, maps that follow the real paths, and technology that respect how people move and remembers. Let's just not build the smart system, but the sensitive ones. The fourth paper is about the public transit commuters. So in this study, we observe how students find information during their commute. And what we found fascinating, some students, especially extrovert, so we divide it into two kind of personality, introvert and extrovert, using the MBTI. And we found that extroverts were comfortable asking people around them for help. For example, they asked a fellow passenger, like, hey, does this train go to the university? But introverts tended to rely on their phones, quietly checking maps or apps instead of talking. So yes, the personality is better. The personality plays the role. We also noticed something even more important. The environment, the noise, the crowd, the train motions really shapes how people look and trust information. So imagine if you are in a noisy, shaky train, it's hard to hear your phone. You are tired and overwhelmed. Even if you read something useful, you might not trust it, or maybe you miss it entirely. So information isn't just read, it's felt. What can we do about that? So let's stop assuming people are sitting calmly when seeking information. They might be standing, sweating, or trying to stay balanced in a train or maybe in even a bus. The fifth paper, it's about the university students navigating online. And let's move to the digital, because everyone's now talking about the digital era. This study focused on how students use online library apps. Ipusnas is the application using the electronic application for borrowing books, ebooks. And this is a very popular reading app in Indonesia. And they weren't always using it at a desk. Many of them were cooking while reading, walking while scrolling, switching between WhatsApp and the library app. So they were multitasking constantly. And what does that mean for the design? You should improve the lighting in the room to change what you can see. And some students said that they scroll by feel, their fingers know their way, they don't have to look closely. So it's like a muscle memory, but digital. The body is part of reading experience, and let's not forget about that. And then maybe this is the last papers that I want to convey in my talk. It's about the food delivery apps. So most of the students nowadays, when they are tired with the study, they often order food through the food delivery apps in the middle of the night, or maybe even in the very early morning. And we did the study on how students use these apps and what affects in their choices. Several students told us that if the app is slow or ugly, I actually lose my appetite. So the visual representations of the applications is very important. And when it looks clean and respond quickly, it feels satisfying even before the food arrives. So you see, it's not about the price or menu, but the look, the feel, the touch response of the app all shape the emotional and physical experience. And let's think about this. The waiting time, the anticipation, the feeling of clicking order, and then finally eating the food, it's all part of full-bodied experience. It's not just a technology moment, but it's human moment. And what we can do is that we must design for the body, like information behavior starts on the screen and ends in the stomach. So yeah, that's the papers that I've already written. Many more, like eye tracking analysis and also clicking behavior. I've already done the paper about that, and I've already focused this field since 5 years ago when I researched about the disaster-related information behavior. I thought about the how the human use their senses, like for example how they use the sight, hearing, touch, and even the emotion. This leads us, or that leads me to thinking more about the everyday technology must reflect embodied information. And no matter where you are, a student, an elderly people, someone who commuting from your home to your work, there's one thing that is true: we use our bodies when we use technology. And how should the technology be designed? And there are four important things in here. Movement matters. When we talk, we often think. When we move, we remember. So when a student's reviewing flashcard while walking to class might learn better because their body is engaged. And the second one is body shapes access. We hold our phones, how we move our eyes, how fast we swipe. This all affect how we use apps. And the environments is also matter. For example, is the room loud? Is it dark? Is there a crowd pushing around? And the fourth one is the design for sensorial, or design should be go beyond logic. So we should not think only about efficiency but also emotion. So the takeaway is the good technology adapts to the real world, how people live, move, and feel, and design for moving, feeling, and multitasking human. Now we move on to the core problem of the study of embodied information behavior. The policies and system, most of them ignore the body as an interface. So most systems today are met with one assumption: people are just brains, no bodies, no bodies. So they expect users to see clearly, sit still, think in a straight, focused way, but not for marginalized groups like people with disabilities, the elderly, disaster survivors, and also those in stressful environment. And what happens when the system doesn't fit the body? People get excluded, they miss out on critical services, and it creates inequality, especially in emergency. So we need to stop ignoring the body as a real interface, and let's design for full humans, not just users who sit still and type. When we research the embodied human information behavior, there are approach, a cross-domain approach that connect everything now. So whether we are talking about the libraries, inclusion for people with disabilities, disaster communication, and everyday technology use, they all share the same design needs: inclusive design, the system that built for everyone, not just average users; multi-sensory pathway, the use of sound, touch, movement, and also visuals, not just one mode. For example, include audio instructions and large button for better access. And the last one is co-creation. Don't design for marginalized users, design with them. Involve blind users when testing the, for example, library navigation tools. So what units all of this domain? The need to understand how people live, feel, and move with information. That's where the three-layer model comes in: live, felt, and situated. These three aspects overlap in every real-world context. And if we design for this, we get systems that truly support human life. Another implications that I want to share with you: to integrate embodied inclusions into policy and practices. So there are 5 steps that any institutions, a library, a school, or a hospital that can start today. You can review your accessibility policy. Don't just ask, do we have a policy? Ask, is it working? So don't just ask, do we have policy, but rather ask, is it working or not? And the second thing is map the barriers. Walk through your space and find what makes things really hard. For example, can a wheelchair user reach the help desk? Pilot small changes and start with one thing. Maybe at a quiet room, tactile floor sign, or an audio announcement. It doesn't have to be perfect, just make it meaningful. The fourth is partner with real users, especially people who often get left behind. Ask them what would make this better for you. And the last is report and improve. Try something, gather feedback, and make it better and repeat. So most of the time, my students always ask, how about the budgets? So it's not about changing the way we see bodies in the system, but taking the very, very small steps first and to include them. So step by step, we move toward the real inclusions. Okay, and also we have like 10 policy recommendation from research to action. So several research that I've already done make call to actions that let's bring everything together. These are real doable steps that institution, libraries, or government can take. The first one is universal design system that work for everyone. As I said in early presentation start. So from the beginning, design system that work for everyone. The second one is inclusion policy with accountability. For example, check if website actually meet accessibility standard. Don't just say they do, but is it working? And the third is assistive technology investment. Search for tools that help people like screen readers, audio menus, or tactile maps. And the fourth is embodied digital literacy. Teach people how to use technology with their bodies, like using voice commands, hand gestures, or movement. The fifth one is libraries as inclusion hubs. Libraries can become welcoming, sensory rich spaces, not just places for books, but also for community learning and care. The sixth is multimodal emergency system. Don't rely just on text. Use sound, light, vibration, tactile, whatever helps everyone. The seventh is co-design with marginalized users. Don't build system for them, build with them, listen, test, and co-create. The eighth is research in embodied information behavior. Keep studying how people use their bodies to find, feel, and act on information. Uh, the ninth is funding and policy reform. Focus more on research area that have the biggest access gaps, like uh, overlooked communities. And the last one is culture of empathy and awareness. Inclusion is not about just technology, it's about how we think and how we care. So start with real human experience, the rest will follow. And the final thought is, what if we design for the margins? Let's pause with a powerful idea. When we design for the margins, we create systems that work better for everyone. And we should think about that for a moment. For example, the body in us, with all its uniqueness, is not the problem. The system is the problem when it doesn't adapt. So instead of forcing people to change, let's change the system so they meet people as they are. And we have we all have different bodies, abilities, emotions, moods, and also energy levels. And designing for embodied success is not just about disability, it's about equity, usability, and also respect. So as for the reflections, access is not a feature, but it's philosophy. So what can we, before we end, I want you to reflect for these two questions. Maybe how might your institution adopt an embodied design approach? What's one thing you can do? Could you change a form? And the second question is what challenges might come up? And think honestly, maybe there are budget issues or human resources resistance, or maybe outdated technology. And you don't have to solve everything today, but you can start the conversation. Embodied design is not about perfections, but it's also about trying, learning, improving together. So where is it now? So by this end of June, I will launch my translation book. It's called The Exploring Information Behavior, an introduction from the very well-known person in information behavior. It's Professor T.D. Wilson. So this book will be published in Indonesian language by Universitas Indonesia Publishing. So if it's launched, then I will give you an information, but it's all in Bahasa Indonesia. So that's it from me. Maybe we can discuss more on the question and answer session. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Lami. Thank you so much for your wonderful presentation about embodied information behavior. Yeah, okay, now we come to the Q&A session. If you have any questions for Lami, or if you want to give your feedback to Lami's questions, yeah, just feel free to unmute your mic, or you can type your questions in the chat window. Lami, actually, I have a question for you. Yeah. It's just based on your introduction to embodied information behavior, I just wondered, do you think embodied information behavior is ubiquitous? Because like we all need our senses to get information, yeah, even for the digital information or virtual information. So based on your understanding or your previous studies, what do you think is the key characteristics of embodied information behavior, and what's the difference between embodied information behavior and other types of information behavior?
Very nice question. What I can say about the embodied information, it's like you said that it's ubiquitous. It's how we see, how we touch, how we use our senses, and how we feel through our emotions. But what can I differ this embodied information into other information behavior is that topic nowadays is like artificial intelligence, right? So, for example, when we relate the embodied information to how we use the artificial intelligence, and most AI system today, like chatbots or maybe recommendation algorithms or maybe search engines, are built on cognitive models. So they assume that people interact with information through text, logic, and clicks. But in real life, we use our bodies, emotion, and senses. And what can I argue with your statement that embodied information is ubiquitous, it means everywhere? Uh, it's not happening in the AI system. What I believe, what I believe. So if AI wants to truly serve people, it must learn how to recognize that users are not just minds on screen, but moving, sensing, and feeling beings. So, for example, the use of AI maybe can help people with disabilities. Um, so maybe in some library system should adapt the gestures or maybe body languages or maybe alternative input, not just for normal users to use. I think, yeah, we need embodied information in the AI uh, for more development in the AI.
So I assume that maybe in the future you'll carry out more studies about AI.
Yes, I'm interested with the how AI more than intelligent, like more empathetic than human. This is
Okay.
impossible. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a very interesting research topic. Yeah, thank you so much, Lami. Any other questions from our audiences? If there are
Great point.
no more questions, I actually have another one for you. Yeah. Well, I think in the latter part of your presentation, you talked about embodied design approach.
Mm,
So I just wonder, are there any frameworks or principles that you will recommend for analyzing or mapping the barriers for information access from the perspective of embodied information behavior?
okay, thought about that, but there are one theory from Diana Nahal. I don't remember. It's published on 2016. It's
Mhm.
called affective information behavior. Affective. So rather than use cognitive, she used the term affective information behavior, and the model she proposed at that time is that we can use the wheel of emotions like anger, happy, disgust, or maybe even angry, to divide the how the people feel at that time. So until now, study of the information behavior using the um, affective or maybe embodied information is very limited. So what can I suggest is that you need to start with reading the affective information behavior first as the basis of the embodied information, and then after that, maybe you can use some of the, I don't know whether the cognitive theory is already working or not, like
Mhm.
the theory of planned behavior or maybe a theory acceptance model, but it's a very cognitive level. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, Lami. Yeah, that's a very good suggestion. And any other questions from our audiences? Yeah, I think maybe they are very shy. Yeah. Oh, here's one question from our
Great.
audience. From Ray Zhang. Hello, Professor. You mentioned the use of embodied information to design systems for marginalized populations, but what are these marginalized populations other than people with disabilities? And can you give us an example? Ray Zhang.
Great.
Yeah.
Nice to meet you, Rajan. Um, I mentioned about the embodied information for design system. Okay, so yeah, maybe as I've told you before, the marginalized demographic is not only for the disaster survivors, but also someone who has a disability, for example, the visual impairments like this. I've already done the study about the embodied access for a person with visual impairments. So um, the marginalized populations is one of them is the people with disabilities for sure, and also senior citizen. So in this study, like we use GPS that can be accessed through the senior citizens phone, and they so our studies tracking the movement through, from for example, like when the senior citizens go out for a walk and then go to the market, and then we found that the routines like walking, it becomes a memory. So the routines itself, like the senior citizens did every day, become a memory. But like I said here, like not just mental but spatial and embodied. And also the public transit commuters like us, like the lecturers, the professors that use the train or bus to go from the home to working, or maybe students that go from home to university. as also marginalized populations because they are not really the target for the system builder. So for example, when we commute, like we use the phone to read study material, but we often forgot during the way, like yeah, this is the, for example, the marginalized populations, and also the university students, like workers and also housewife, when they navigating online through the borrowing system in the National Library. So yeah, that's only a few marginalized populations that I can give for your further references.
Okay, thank you so much,
Thank you
Lami.
very much.
Yeah. Any other questions from our audiences? If there's no more questions, maybe I think we come to the end of today's event. Yeah, thank you so much, Lami, for bringing us such a wonderful presentation, and we really get great insights from your talk today about embodied information behavior of different types of citizens. And thank all our participants for attending today's event. I believe we all enjoyed Lami's presentation. And yeah, hope this is a rewarding experiences for you. And thank you so much for your participation. And we look forward to seeing you all again in our next iKeynote session. Okay, this is the end of today's event. Thank you so much, Lami.
Thank you, Dee. See you in the Philippines.
Yeah, see you. See you.
Thank you very
Bye.
much. Bye bye.